We back out of the webbing of neurons and synapses as the title credits show up, winding up or rising out of a pore on the perspiration-flickered skin of the hero, our storyteller, as he peers down the barrel of a firearm that has been stuck in his mouth. The firearm is held by a man named Tyler who actually looks at his watch, counting down to ground zero. Proceeding, he inquires as to whether the storyteller has anything to say. The storyteller mutters through the weapon before it's eliminated and says all the more obvious that he can't imagine anything. As Tyler watches out of the great ascent window to the dim city underneath them, the storyteller reviews exactly how he met Tyler before halting himself and carrying us to the start of the story. The storyteller lets us know he hasn't rested for quite a long time. His work as a voyaging item review expert for a vehicle organization doesn't help his sleeping disorder, since he should travel regularly, encountering episodes of fly slack notwithstanding the ordinary pressure of his position, appreciating the minuscule existence of single-serving cleanser and cleanser at each area. On the off chance that he can't rest, he rides the channels or peruses Fernie, a farce of IKEA, indexes, buying the following piece of stylistic layout to add to his loft. He's a self-broadcasted slave of commercialization. He goes to his PCP looking for help. However, all the specialist will do is propose a natural enhancement rather than drugs, and that the storyteller visit a care group so that testicular disease could see genuine torment. There, the storyteller meets Robert Weave Paulson, the large moozy and an ex-jock and steroid client who experiences an outrageous instance of gynecomastia because of chemical treatment after his gonads were eliminated. The Weave is very ready to embrace the storyteller and help. Stuck between Weave's tremendous bosoms, the storyteller, at last, discovers a sense of reconciliation and begins crying uncontrollably. The enthusiastic delivery permits him to rest, and he, therefore, becomes dependent on help gatherings, outlining his week going to various gatherings and faking disease. Be that as it may, the presence of a lady named Marla Artis tosses the storyteller's framework messed up. He perceives her as a traveler, having seen her at different gatherings, including testicular disease, and he is upset by her misleads where he can't rest any longer. After one gathering, he stands up to her. She contends that she's doing precisely what he does and jokes that the gatherings are less expensive than a film and there's free espresso. Rather than ratting each other out, they consent to separate the week and trade numbers. Regardless of his endeavors, the storyteller's sleep deprivation proceeds. On a trip back from one of his excursions for work, the storyteller meets Tyler Durden. Tyler offers an exceptional viewpoint on crisis method manuals in the plane, and they initiate an easygoing discussion. Tyler is a cleanser sales rep, in case he's not filling in for late shifts as a projectionist and slipping pieces of pornography between reels. The storyteller shows up at the baggage carousel to find that his bag has been seized, in all likelihood because of a secretive vibration, before he taxis home. Nonetheless, home, a 15th-story apartment suite, has been impacted into the night by what was guessed to be a flawed gas line lighted by a sparkle from the fridge. Having no place to go, the storyteller tracks down Tyler's business card and hits him up. They meet in a parking area behind a bar where Tyler welcomes the storyteller to request to come live with him, on one condition, that the storyteller hit Tyler as hard as possible. The storyteller, however confused, goes along and they take part in a clenched hand battle before sharing several beverages. The experience is shockingly euphoric, and the storyteller and Tyler return to Tyler's haggard house where plainly Tyler is crouching. Tyler and the storyteller participate in more battles about the coming days, and they before the long draw in the consideration of other troublemakers. Observing their little battling bunch developing, Tyler sets up a formal battle club in the cellar of the bar where they had their first battle. Enrollment rapidly increments, and Tyler and the storyteller design a progression of rules, the initial two being you don't discuss the battle club. The guidelines are reliably broken, with individuals welcoming their companions to go along with them. On numerous occasions, Tyler demonstrates his adroit, if irregular and indecent, see on life. The storyteller gets together with Marla by some coincidence, telling her that he hasn't gone to some other gatherings since he's joined another care group for men, as it were. While he actually treats her with gentle hatred, unmistakably he thinks about her with interest. At the point when she gluts on Xanax, she calls the storyteller who, worn out on her meandering aimlessly, puts the telephone down. He finds later that Tyler got the telephone, followed the call to Marla's home, and took her back to the house where they occupied with overwhelming sex, much to the storyteller's loathing. The following morning in the kitchen, Marla tracks down the storyteller, who is shocked to see her in his home. The storyteller's wonder affronts her and she leaves in disdain. After she leaves, Tyler enters the kitchen and cheerfully uncovers that he and Marla engaged in sexual relations the prior night. He likewise seriously makes the storyteller guarantee that he'll never specify Tyler to Marla. That evening the storyteller joins Tyler while he takes human fat out of the dumpster of a liposuction facility. Tyler says that the best fat for making the cleanser he sells comes from people. Back in their kitchen, Tyler tells the storyteller the best way to deliver fat from the fat. After clarifying somewhat about the historical backdrop of soap making, Tyler establishes a wet kiss on the rear of the storyteller's hand and dumps unadulterated lye on the spot, causing a horrendous synthetic to consume. Tyler won't allow the storyteller to wash the lye off his hand, saying that water will demolish the consume, and letting the storyteller know that the consumption is a transitional experience. Tyler has consumed his own hand indistinguishably. Tyler likewise powers the storyteller to acknowledge loyalty to him and afterward kills the ignite with vinegar. Afterward, when they meet with a beauty care product sales rep at a retail chain, the storyteller comments that Tyler's cleanser sells at an exceptionally significant expense. With the storyteller, he holds a school dropout at gunpoint and takes steps to kill him on the off chance that he doesn't seek after his fantasy about turning into a veterinarian. He permits Lou, the proprietor of the bar where their battle club is held, to pummel him before hacking blood all over him and requesting to remain in the cellar. Sickened, Lou concurs. Tyler gives the club individuals a schoolwork task. They will all provoke a total outsider and lose. The storyteller says it's a lot harder undertaking than anybody would suspect. We've confronts individuals in a midtown square. Another part irritates a cleric. Following a time of days, Marla leaves and Tyler acquaints the storyteller with his freshest diversion. Utilizing his capable abilities in cleanser making, Tyler has transformed the storm cellar of the house into a research facility where he utilizes cleanser and different fixings to make explosives. Tyler and the storyteller keep overseeing Battle Club, yet this time, at a vastly different recurrence. Getting flack at work, the storyteller at long last defies his supervisor with information about the inadequate practice and haggles to telecommute with expanded compensation to keep his mouth shut. At the point when his manager items and calls security, the storyteller pounds himself seriously so that, when security shows up, they are persuaded to think that the storyteller's supervisor attacked his worker. Tyler in the long run allots schoolwork to his enlisted people and lectures them about the hindrances of commercialization and depending on society and authority figures. He proposes to return to the time where a man's worth relied upon the perspiration on his back and where he just utilized what he really wanted. This way of thinking develops into what Tyler calls task anarchy, and the battling in storm cellars transforms into naughty destructive incidents and annihilation. Their activities don't go unrecognized, yet Tyler figures out how to show the lead examiner that the very individuals he's hunting are those that they rely upon: servers, transport drivers, sewer engineers, and the sky is the limit from there. They undermine the police boss with mutilation and the examination is cancelled. The rundown house where Tyler and the storyteller reside transforms into commotion focal, where each newcomer is put through a thorough time of inception and preparing and where the most recent plans are brought forth. While task commotion develops, the storyteller starts to feel increasingly more far off from Tyler, and envy sets in, making him venture to such an extreme as to thump and distort one select because he needed to annihilate something delightfully. As they leave this battle club meeting, Tyler drives the storyteller and two individuals in an enormous Lincoln Town vehicle. In the downpour, Tyler insults the storyteller, the idea that he hasn't started to carry on with his life to his fullest potential. At the point when he permits the vehicle to float into approaching traffic, Tyler reproves the storyteller for being powerless and wretched. Tyler then, at that point, concedes that he obliterated the storyteller's loft. The storyteller at last yields, Tyler allows the vehicle to float and they hammer head-on into another vehicle. They rise up out of the disaster area with Tyler shouting that the storyteller has another everyday routine dependent on his experience through a brush with death. At the point when Tyler vanishes for some time, the storyteller is left at home with a consistently expanding band of pandemonium individuals who stare at the TV and giggle at their advanced destructive incidents. At the point when the storyteller requests to find out about their underhandedness, Bounce tells him the first principle of venture anarchy is you don't pose inquiries. Later Bob is killed during a bungled harm activity and the storyteller looks to disband the gathering before things gain out of influence. He attempts to find Tyler and finds a rundown of telephone numbers he has of late utilized. The storyteller trails the rundown all around the nation, finding that battle clubs have grown all over the place. At one specific bar, the barkeep tends to the storyteller as Sir, which prompts the storyteller to inquire as to whether he knows him. The barkeep, after being guaranteed that he's not being put through a test, lets the storyteller know that he is Tyler Durden. In shock, the storyteller gets back to his lodging and calls up Marla, inquiring as to whether they've at any point had intercourse. However bothered, Marla affirms their relationship and states that she knows him as Tyler Durden. Marla hangs up and Tyler out of nowhere shows up in the room and defies the storyteller, letting him know he broke his guarantee to not talk about Tyler to Marla. A couple of moments of discussion affirms that they are, for sure, one individual. The storyteller has sleep deprivation. He can't rest thus, at whatever point he thinks he is, or at arbitrary pieces of a day, Tyler's persona dominates. The revelation makes the storyteller faint. At the point when he awakens, he observes one more telephone list next to him with brings from everywhere the country. He gets back to his home to think that it is totally vacant, yet one release board yields a presentation of organizers itemizing specific structures inside the monetary locale. He finds that everyone has been invaded by individuals from undertaking disorder and that Tyler is anticipating obliterating them, accordingly eradicating MasterCard organization records and starting all over again. In a frenzy, the storyteller snatches all the data and reports himself to the neighborhood police. Nonetheless, after telling the monitor all that he knows and being left with 2 officials, the storyteller finds that the officials are commotion individuals and that let him know that they were told by him to take the wads of any individual who meddled with undertaking mayhem, even him. The storyteller figures out how to escape by taking one of the officials' guns and unofficial of the structures set for destruction. He observes a plain van in the parking structure loaded up with dynamite and endeavors to incapacitate the bomb. Tyler shows up and spurs him, yet the storyteller effectively incapacitates the bomb. He and Tyler participate in a savage battle which shows up strangely on the observation camera since the storyteller is just battling himself. The Tyler character wins and reactivates the bomb, and the storyteller carries himself to another structure where they can securely watch the annihilation. Back at the initial scene, the storyteller, with the weapon in his mouth, mutters again and tells Tyler, "I actually can't imagine anything." Tyler grins and says, "Ah, flashback humor." The storyteller asks that Tyler leave the task, yet Tyler is resolute. He purports that what he's doing is saving humankind from the abuse of industrialism and pointless extravagances, and that there will not need to be any losses. Individuals who work in the structures are all pandemonium individuals, totally mindful of the arrangement. Close to limit, the storyteller comes to understand that whatever Tyler does, he can do. He sees Tyler with the weapon in his grasp and understands that it's really in his grasp. He puts it up to his own jaw and advises Tyler to pay attention to him. He says that his eyes are open and afterward places the weapon in his mouth and pulls the trigger. The slug shoots out of the side of his jaw and Tyler is killed with a vast injury to the rear of his head. As the storyteller recuperates, individuals from undertaking commotion show up with Bites and Marla close behind. Tyler had recently trained her to be brought to them. Seeing Tyler's injuries, the anarchy individuals let Marla be with him to get some clinical supplies. Tyler remains with Marla and tells her that all that will be fine as the main explosion touches off the structure before them. The others on the square before long go with the same pattern, and Tyler intertwines Marla's hand with his and tells her, "You met me at an extremely abnormal time in my life." They watch as the explosives go off and the breakdown of the structure. To watch more video like this, click on the videos on your screen, and don't forget to let me know how you feel about today's video in the comments down below. And at last I will say, stay safe and stay healthy. See you next videos.